In any domain of life, we pay a price to play, whether that's time, money, or an emotional investment. We put in precious resources hoping for exponential returns. And it's this initial investment that fuels our resilience to keep going, that mental and emotional fortitude that persists despite challenges. It reminds us of the promises we made to ourselves and what we are putting on the line to make them happen. It is truly the only way to break through disappointments. But what happens when you run out of resources, when you have nothing left to give? No money, no time, no will to keep that resilience going. How far can sheer persistence take you then? The truth is, not very far. And for the chronically disappointed, this is very much the reality. Their once resilient spirit gets crushed under the weight of depleted resources, which begs the question, which comes first, the resilience or the resources? Do you need resources to feed your resilience or resilience to feed your resources? And what do you do when you reach that dead zone where you have neither to give? For many people, despair, apathy, and long recovery periods set in before they dare to try again, if ever. And this is the dilemma that disappointments put us in. And sure, maybe the first or second time it's not that bad, your tank isn't empty, but every time you resist pushback, you are using up another token, a token of will, a token of belief, a token of time. No matter how resilient you are, there will come a point, a critical point, where you will run out. Because each time your hopes get crushed, you expend limited willpower and optimism, losing faith that this endeavor will work out, or the ability to see it through until the end. And there are two things that cause this. Number one is underestimating the resources and the resilience required to attain your goal. And number two, solely relying on sheer persistence instead of a supportive, sustainable approach. With that being considered, it also doesn't help that we put ourselves in this bind where we will only replenish our energy, our time, our money, our trust in the process once the goal is attained. But 9 times out of 10, we will run out of resilience before we even get there, especially when things don't play out like we thought they will. Unmet expectations and disappointments drain resilience and resources like nothing else. So as necessary as resilience is, alone, it will not be enough. What is needed is a way to replenish in the midst of the journey. And that is where today's skill comes in. Resourceful resilience, the skill that frees you from this bind. In case you didn't know, you are watching a series. In part 1, we discussed the serious consequences of not honestly and thoroughly addressing disappointment, particularly for people who consistently experience it. We went into depth about the dark side of common advice, like bulldozing through or brushing it off or assigning meaning that isn't there. And in part 2, it was all about the myth of lowering expectations. We discussed its impact on emotional integrity and self-trust, as well as how to avoid the cycle of self-gaslighting. I highly recommend that you watch the series from start to finish to get a holistic and nuanced understanding of how to thrive in spite of disappointments. All videos connect but can stand on their own in case you are drawn to a specific theme. In this video, I'll be introducing the skill that freed me from this reoccurring cycle of disappointment and victimization as a result, and will be giving you actionable steps with examples on how to cultivate it in the upcoming videos. Now that that's out of the way, let's get back on topic. My first serious run-in with this dilemma was during my first year in sales. As a new salesperson, I was encouraged to see every call, every door as a money-making opportunity, a resource to remind me of all the money that's out there waiting to be made. But after countless rejections and door slams in below 0 degree weather, I burnt out. no pun intended. And I started to truly experience the limits of betting on resilience alone to get me results, because I couldn't get over how many wasted attempts there were just to get one victory. I could keep pushing and persevering, but there comes a point where you're almost gambling away your precious time, energy, and hope on the slim chance that it will work out this time around. And as someone prone to disappointment, I became wary of freely expending my resources without getting something in return each time. So I started asking myself after each interaction, what did I just gain here? Whether it was a bad or good outcome, there had to be something for me to take away. And my mentality shifted from, oh, wasted attempt onto the next, to insisting that every experience entering my life was now mine to extract value from. If I'm putting a resource in, I am getting a resource out, no questions asked. Here's an example of how this changed my sales process entirely. Whether I was on the phones or knocking doors, the pattern was the same. I would pitch, they would respond positively or negatively. If interested, great, I may get a deal. If disinterested, I'd ask them, what made you hesitate? Maybe I misrepresented my offer. How can I do better? And often they'd explain and sometimes give me another shot. And if they refused, I'd still gain insight on what didn't work. Maybe it was the time of day that I called. Maybe it was the demographic, the pacing, my tone, anything. There were endless insights to replenish me if I just looked a little bit harder. And so I stopped feeling like I wasted time and energy without a deal, and I started seeing each encounter as giving me perspective to reinvest from. So this influx of value kept me going because I never truly ran out of insight. And this was a huge turning point where I started to get really good at leveraging setbacks for progress. Resilience was no longer an issue to maintain at that point because there were plenty of resources. All I had to do was get better at finding them and get more creative in how I can use them. And I credit this to, besides the fact that my job depended on it, the realization that disappointment is unlike most issues. Why approaches like powering through, attributing it to destiny, lowering expectations don't work is because they are turned into back-end solutions to a front-end problem. Disappointment is a front-end problem. What does that mean? Back-end solutions are like preventative measures, like building up a mentality or systems or an emotional buffer to prevent something from happening or to prevent getting hurt. Their purpose is to minimize risk as much as possible by being prepared as much as possible. So when you preemptively shut down so you can just power through, or assume that everything is working out for you, or lower your expectations in advance, you think this is cutting disappointment from the source as not to give it a chance to manifest in your life, but that's not how it works, unfortunately. Disappointment is not a lesson in prevention, it is a lesson in utilization. Back-end solutions work for issues like a lack of confidence, a lack of competence, or time management, productivity, but they do not work when you are face to face with an unexpected situation that you could not have prepared for. How could you? You don't know what you don't know. These are front-end problems that require front-end solutions, responsive, fast-thinking, creative solutions that are tasked with utilization. And these skills are much harder to build because you can't really practice them beforehand. You can only truly learn on the job. Kind of like the state of our education system, where we spent decades preparing but never seem to really know what we were doing until we are in the field. So real time, real life, real consequences are the practice, which makes you gain an appreciation for disappointing circumstances on some level, because within them is this rare opportunity to develop the most necessary skill for success of any kind, and that is leveraging any situation in your favor. There's a famous clip of Sadhguru saying, In life, things will happen to you, inevitably, and you have two choices. You could either become wounded or you could become wise. And if you experience a lot of difficulty, then you should be the wisest person. And it's true, the most admirable people in the world have been through the most. That correlation is not a coincidence. All that preparation, the denying of your expectations, the victim mentality, the overriding your emotions to power through, they cannot prevent pain. The pain of being wrong, underprepared, embarrassed, not knowing what to do from here. And worst of all, the pain of having to go back and become more resilient when you are just so desperate for a win. There is no way to skip that process. You just have to go through it and you have to learn how to utilize it. Here's the problem with resilience on its own. When someone experiences a lot of unmet expectations, number one, it is very hard to sustain because most of the time it's fueled by motivation or will, which runs out very quickly in this case. And number two, it doesn't provide enough closure for that kind of person. It leaves that person feeling like all the effort and the energy and the time they put into something went to waste, and that all future emotional investments also have a high chance of going to waste. The chance of experiencing a disappointment is high simply based on what has happened before. And it's like you're no longer operating on will to fuel your resilience because you're running out. You are now trying to conserve energy and minimize pain to barely get you by, and so it doesn't last. And here's why it's so important not to avoid feeling pain. When pain isn't alchemized into progress, when it's not transformed into progress, it becomes baggage very quickly. Sure, you can move forward despite it, but it starts to get very heavy carrying around unprocessed experiences that you haven't been able to find a use for, a place for in your life and in your story. All of this while trying to conserve energy and avoiding any potential for pain. Disappointing experiences stop contributing to your story of finding your power, and instead they start taking away from it. So when I started to look at it this way, the question wasn't, how can I stop disappointments from getting to me? It was, how can I alchemize them? Because if I can do that, then I'll stop holding back, because the pain isn't something to be afraid of anymore. It is something to use. It is a resource. In part one, we discussed how both acceptance and a higher degree of agency in most cases is required to authentically heal from a disappointment in order to move forward. Not only is it necessary to accept the situation completely, but more so to influence it in some capacity. And the perfect solution that has both acceptance and agency is to be resourceful. Get better at finding the value in any situation and get even better at using it to your advantage. How do you do that? There are a few steps that I'm going to go over in the following videos in more detail, but here's a summary. First, you express to release negative emotions from the body, because that has to come out, that has to be cleared. You tune in to understand the emotion itself. Where is it coming from? Why is it bothering you? Open your mind to assess the situation and how you can use it in a better way. Assert that you will acquire value. And lastly, account for all the times you did this successfully. Only then can you truly move forward. The tuning in to understand, the releasing from your body, these are all exercises in acceptance, because in order to do that, you have to accept what happened to you. The opening of your mind to see the situation differently, the assertion that you're going to acquire value no matter how hard the situation was, and the accounting of all the times you did this successfully are all exercises in agency. And the word that encompasses all of this is resourcefulness. This is the missing piece. This is what makes resilience more accessible for those of us who have been burned too many times. Resourceful resilience is different because it encourages you to capitalize on all situations, favorable or unfavorable. It takes the concept of resilience a step further, arguing the real power is in our ability to leverage disappointing experiences for clarity, opportunity, perspective, inspiration, and context, which are all forms of constructive feedback. It is the active, conscious, intentional utilization of all experiences for character building, leaving no time, attempt, intention, or resolve wasted, which provides closure. So you'll have a larger capacity to find fulfillment even when things don't go your way, because you'll know how to use them your way. To put it simply, when life gives you lemons, you make some incredible lemonade. Resourceful resilience is a high barrier to entry skill, and for a good reason. One of them we discussed earlier. You can only really practice this in the situation itself. And the other reason is because it guarantees your arrival to wherever you want to go. No matter where you're going to make it. It is just a matter of time if you get really good at this. Resilience on its own puts you on the right track. However, there's a huge emphasis on just powering through and not enough on transforming the situation into something that is useful for you and how you can do that. In my case, an ex-chronically disappointed person, I had to do this for me to make peace with disappointments in my life. I had to be 100% sure that they did not set me back, that the time, that the energy, the resolve I was putting in was not for nothing just because something out of my control happened. And what really sealed the deal for me was realizing how unsustainable it would be to only progress in life when circumstances perfectly and expectedly arrange themselves for me. If I only moved when that happened, I would barely make a dent. And if I did somehow get there, I would get there as such a weak person. So I didn't have another option besides utilizing every experience to my advantage and begin by training my mind and my body with self-compassion and self-accountability to do this when something disappointing happens. Because the reality is, no amount of hard work, smart work, is going to perfectly shape our circumstances. There are just too many variables out of our hands. But fortunately, circumstances don't have to match or exceed our expectations for them to be useful. And that's exactly where the answer is. If you are determined to take something and to make something out of any situation, there's nothing stopping you from getting what you want. And to be frank, you don't really have time for any other way, because the other option is to wait around for things to change or avoid taking any chances at all. And that's just an automatic loss. Either that or understanding that anything that enters your space becomes a resource for your transformation. And I have to say, my favorite side effect of adopting this mentality is this unconcern for anything that is not the focus. And if something frustrating happens that I'm having a really hard time with, I allow myself to feel it. I try not to run away from the pain. Pinpoint exactly what it is, where it is, why it hurt me. Release it from the body. And when I'm ready, which could take a few minutes, it could take a few days, it could take a few weeks, once I'm cleared, I look at the situation like it's mine now. This entered my life, so I can now claim whatever I need from it in order to level up, in order to heal from the situation. Take that resource, use it in whatever area of my life, and pay close attention to how much better it gets. And when I'm ready, when I start to see, oh, good things are happening from that disappointment that I turned into a resource, I will thank it. I will thank it for showing me how much power I really have over my life. And I will also thank it for giving me the opportunity to see what I need to work on before it got worse. Despite the failing, the unmet expectations, etc., it doesn't bother me like it used to, because I know that if I keep practicing this skill, it will only be a matter of time. And if I can somehow leverage all experience to build skill and character and the humility to keep learning, that matter of time will be even sooner. So not only are you moving forward, but you are moving forward with resources that you didn't have before that almost came out of nowhere. Resources that align you with your goals, that clarify your values, that accelerate your growth and diversify your fulfillment way more than before. And who knows how much time and trouble that has saved you. This is why I choose this approach over all the other types of advice and invite you to consider using it as well. It is the perfect balance between acceptance and agency, because it is through the acceptance of the disappointment that you can exercise your agency by simply asserting, where is the opportunity? Because I am not leaving here without it. However, I want to make something very clear. When you first undergo a disappointment, this is not going to be your first thought. Your first thought is, I am heartbroken, I am devastated, I am let down, and all I want to do is shut down, conserve energy, and never put myself out there again because I am so hurt. Fair. Totally fair. You have a right to feel that way. So you first have to be honest about where you are starting from when a disappointment happens and work from there. Keep your capacity in mind before you can even think about, okay, how can I be resourceful right now? This is not the first step. Rather, it is a byproduct of all these practices coming together at your pace, combined with a bit of accountability to get you cleared and stable enough to be resourceful naturally. Now, if I was watching this video, my next question would be, okay, how exactly do I cultivate resourceful resilience? What are the practical steps and the tools that I can start applying? And that's exactly what the next few videos will be covering. I'll be sharing 5 powerful yet accessible tools on how you can tap into resourcefulness when you feel blindsided by disappointments. These include nervous system regulation to discharge heavy emotions from the body to remain clear and grounded, emotional granularity to give language to subtle emotions in order to effectively process them, cognitive reappraisal to identify opportunities through benefit finding, diffuse and diversify to maximize the value from a disappointment across all areas of your life, no matter which area it came from, and finally, the luck list, to dissolve negative biases and success amnesia in a light and exciting way. We all intuitively use these tools already, but when practiced consciously, consistently, and collectively, they take your resilience to the next level. I try to explore each concept and tool as thoroughly as I possibly can so you can discover what resonates most, but covering full details would make these videos way too long. I've tried it before. So if you want a more customized integration plan, one that's tailored to your unique capacity, conditions, and compatibility, you can work with me one-on-one. The link is in the Instagram bio and in the description below. I really hope you enjoyed this video and found some value in it for your journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one on nervous system regulation. Thanks.